Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Bankrupt Hippo YouTube channel. I'm Bryce, and this is another episode of the Handmaid's Tale Talk, where we talk about the world of Handmaid's Tale. This is going to be a spoiler discussion for Season 4, Episode 8. So for those of you who have not seen that episode yet of the Handmaid's Tale, feel free to go check it out on Hulu, and then maybe come back and watch this video. Otherwise, if you don't care about spoilers, welcome back, and we're glad you're here. So a lot happens in this episode, and I think it really makes up for a very quiet first 3 or 4 episodes of the season. For those of you who have been around since I started commentating on Season 4, I wasn't very impressed with the first 3 or 4 episodes. I think a lot of things were very quiet, meandered quite a bit, and now we're getting some crazy payoff just about every episode, and I think it's going to really ride high until the end of the season, because now we've got 2 episodes left, that being 9 and 10. So what are the major milestones that really happened in this particular episode? First, we'll start off with essentially June and Luke are still kind of working things out, trying to sort out how to help June adapt to her life in Canada. And I want to focus on Luke in this particular case. Luke is sort of very conflicted in this episode because obviously with June being his wife, he wants to do everything he can to help her, and he is having a really hard time figuring out what exactly it is that he needs to do in order to help June. He mentions to Moira that June's been very distant, that he can't quite understand how to help her. He doesn't know how to help her. And Moira points out, it's like, well, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but Moira says, well, in a way, it's like you don't really know what she's going through. And he's like, well, yeah, maybe that's the problem. Maybe I don't know what she's going through. If I don't know what she went through, there's no way I can really help her. And every time Luke confronts June about it and says, hey, talk to me, like, how can I help you? I don't know what else to do here. And he makes so many attempts to try to get June to talk, and she just won't. And I feel for the guy. I feel for him because it's been years since he's seen her, and she's just having trouble opening up to him and everything that's been going on. That changes a little bit by the end of the episode. The episode kind of ends. I'm jumping around a little bit, so forgive me. But at the end of the episode, June essentially tells Luke, I need to tell you about the last time I saw Hannah, which we know what happened the last time June saw Hannah just a few episodes ago, but Luke doesn't know. And I think that would maybe help the two of them sort of, like I said, get reacclimated to each other, because this is a big transition. They haven't seen each other in years. June is adapting and having a free life. And after all she's been through, it's like, holy shit. Of course, how do you come back from something like that? It's very difficult, and the show starting to slowly progress through that at a natural pace. So I was very impressed by that. Another thing that happens this episode is we actually get introduced to basically this support group. And what the support group is, Moira runs it, is basically handmaids who have come back or escaped Gilead and are now living in Canada. And it's a group of about 10, I want to say. And they get together and meet regularly to talk about their life in Gilead and how they move forward with their lives. Well, at one of these sessions, this woman comes up to Emily, and Emily's getting pretty upset, and she's like, get away from me. And June and Moira are like, whoa, what the hell is going on? And this woman just says, here's my contact info, Emily, if you ever want to talk, I want to speak with you. Well, come to find out that this woman's name is Irene. And guess what Irene used to do? She used to be an aunt in Gilead, and more specifically, she was, I believe, Emily's first aunt before Aunt Lydia. And what exactly happened with Aunt Irene, and why is Emily so upset? Well, the fact of the matter is, if you don't remember, Emily used to have a lover in Gilead. I believe she was a Martha that she was very close with. It turns out Aunt Irene knew about it, and Aunt Irene didn't really physically harm Emily. She emotionally scarred her by having her lover killed and hung, and basically Emily mutilated, I believe June was the term that June used. So it makes your head explode in a way, because it's like, oh my god, you just get so many questions. One, how did she get out of Gilead? Two, how did she get around like Canada's laws and whatnot, because she was an aunt in Gilead, and aunts do terrible things to people. So it begs a whole ton of questions. And basically what happens is that June drags Irene to one of their sessions with all the handmaids, and it's a very interesting moment in particular because of the fact that there's so many conflicting ideas. Moira's like, June, this is not the time or the place, because Emily's really upset by seeing Irene, and anybody would be. And June and all the rest of the handmaids, or former handmaids, I should say, I should be clear about that. Former handmaids are all sitting around like, raise your hand if you want her to stay. And so they all raise their hand and they all want to hear what Irene has to say. And essentially what Irene does is she sits in front of Emily and begs for forgiveness. She's like, I want you to forgive me. What can I do to make things right? And Emily's just like, nothing. There's nothing you can do to make this right. And she leaves. And what I didn't know where the show was going to go with this, and I'm kind of conflicted about it because on one hand it's like, for a brief moment I thought to myself, wow, it shows that not only are the former handmaids struggling when they leave Gilead and are free, and how do they adapt to new life, but like also the Marthas and even aunts, like they're probably in the same boat. Like they could probably use some support in adapting to their new free lives and coping with the things they had to do when they were in Gilead. And the show doesn't really explore that path necessarily. What it really does is okay, after this moment, Moira decides to talk to Emily about it just to see how she's feeling. And Moira's like, or maybe it was Emily, I can't remember. But I think Moira told Emily, like, June just thought that would make you feel better by bringing Irene there so you could confront her face to face. And Moira asks Emily, did it help? And Emily's like, I don't really know. Well, they get to talking a little bit more, and remember, while all this is going on, Fred and Serena are about to go to trial, or they're being on trial, I guess you could say, or sentencing. I can't remember what exactly the legal term is for it. But Moira essentially gives this idea to Emily, like, hey, maybe you could get Irene to testify, because Irene asked, what can I do to make this right? And at the time, Emily couldn't think of anything. There's nothing they could do. But if they could get Irene to testify about Gilead, maybe it could put more people away from Gilead, put them all in prison so that they can't hurt anybody else. And Emily's like, you know what? Yeah, that's actually a pretty good idea. So one of the things that happens just following through this particular plot point to the end of the episode, Emily is on the drive going to see Irene. She's got mustered up the strength to go and talk to her, maybe get some closure that she wants or needs. Well, she pulls up and we see a whole bunch of police cars, an ambulance, and Irene is hanging from a tree. She committed suicide, and Emily is just kind of shocked and drives off. So we cut to the next session that all of them are having together at this support group, and all of her fellow former handmaids are all telling her, like, hey, that her committing suicide wasn't your fault. You had nothing to do with it. And June kind of makes this really good point, and I think this is very important. She says, why don't we let Emily say how she's feeling, if she even wants to? Because then it's acknowledging the fact that now that they're free people, they should be able to express themselves in the way that they want, which is a beautiful thing. So allowing Emily to have that opportunity to express herself is one, showing June's growth, because then it's showing that it's not always her way and the highway. Plus, it's showing the growth of them as people, because now they are free and now they get to voice their opinions, and we get to reap the rewards of that, because we didn't always get to see their free opinions before, or thoughts or feelings. So Emily essentially takes a turn here from what I expected her, and she says, honestly, I'm ecstatic. And I'm like, holy shit, wow, this took a turn. And Emily says she says that she feels better that she's dead, and she'd feel even better if she knew she had something to do with it. So I wasn't expecting that. I don't know what I expected. I mean, I guess I don't really blame her in a way, but then again, I've never been in that situation before, so I can't really say for sure. But it took a different turn, and then pretty soon a lot of the handmaids in the group are like, you know what? Yeah, like, if I wish we could harm our commanders, I'm paraphrasing, of course, and whatnot. It was like, wow, there's a lot of like anger in the group, and Moira is kind of like, we shouldn't give in to anger, we should heal. And June kind of questions, like, why shouldn't we pursue that path of anger? Why shouldn't we want to be furious and whatnot? And Moira didn't really have a good answer for that. So it shows where all of them are kind of collectively at in terms of moving forward. Maybe for them, moving forward is giving payback, getting even, I guess you could say. Well, not even is not exactly a good way, but maybe they just don't want to heal. Maybe they want to actively do something about what their past. So very interesting to see where they're all going with that. I honestly think that, and I can't say this for sure because I don't know where the rest of the series is going, but I think it would have been very interesting if they didn't kill off Irene so quickly. If they did, if they allowed Emily to go and talk to her and maybe show a little bit more of the side of even Aunt's and Martha's need a little bit of support as well because of the terrible things they've had to do. But then again, it's tough for me to really say that because the aunts have done such terrible things to a lot of people in Gilead, and do they really deserve to have that support? And that's a really big ethical question. It's like, do they deserve that support? And really, no one really wins in an ethical debate. So who knows? It's just the show posts some very interesting, thought-provoking things like that I really appreciated, and my head is still spinning about it. As you guys can see, I'm even fumbling over my words just thinking about it, but I thought that was the most interesting plot point of the entire episode, and I am curious to see where the show is going to go from here, and how all of these former handmaids are going to essentially move forward with their past and either do something about their anger or just heal, as Moira might be more in favor of. Because at the end of the day, Moira is more in favor of healing and constructively moving forward, while June is more taking the approach of fighting back, and that's her way of moving forward. So that's another thing too. Everybody's got their way of moving forward. So really, really interesting. Another thing that happens throughout this episode is June gets the opportunity to give a testimony in court against Fred Waterford, and Serena Joy Waterford is her full name, and that's what they use in the episode. So this kind of lines up with Luke not being able to, or not knowing what to do exactly to help June. So basically, at the very beginning of the episode, June is she says in the support group like, "Hey, I am ecstatic and I am so pumped to go testify against Fred and Serena." And again, it's showing that June's way of moving forward is by helping put Fred and Serena away in prison in Canada. So that is her way of moving forward, and in doing so, she has to give a testimony. Excuse me one sec. Oh my goodness, there we go. Okay. Back to what I was going to say. So June wants to give her testimony, and in giving her testimony, she has to say very tough things that Luke might not be able to handle. And Luke, he wants to hear these things, but he doesn't, but June does not want him there while she's reading those things aloud because it's very upsetting, and she's just not ready for Luke to hear all of that. So she goes to court that day. She's ready to give her testimony, and she sees Luke show up. And I'm surprised that the show didn't make a bigger deal of this or not, because it's like Luke is distinctly going against June's wishes by showing up in court. And maybe that would be partially the reason why June is probably upset with Luke. And I really don't blame June for that, because it was June's wish to not have Luke there, but Luke wants to help as much as he can. So he shows up to really know what she's had to go through. And those two kind of conflicting interests, they make for some very interesting plot points for the two of them in the relationship. So it was, I gotta give props to OT Fagbenelli for this part of the episode, because as he's hearing June's testimony, the acting chops are just coming in strong, because you could see the sadness, the anger in his eyes as he's hearing June give her testimony. It's just like, wow, man, like mad props, because that he brought it in that scene. But anyways, June gives her testimony detailing basically a really, what I would say is actually a really nice recap from episode 1 all the way up until this point. And as a longtime fan of the show, I kind of appreciated that, because when you're a fan of a TV show for so long, you kind of forget some of these details that go on. And the show actually did a really nice subtle reminder of summing up in 2 minutes in June's testimony. And it's like, wow, we've come a long way in watching this series. So I enjoyed that part of the episode, and it also reminds the audience as to what June is fighting for. And about at the end of the testimony, the defense attorney that is representing Fred and Serena, I believe, starts questioning June. And throughout this line of questioning, Fred starts spinning this his usual argument about why Gilead is quote unquote the right thing to do because the population of the world is going down and it hasn't really gone up. The birth rate is plummeting, and he keeps trying to spin Gilead as a positive thing. And June is like, "Are you fucking serious right now?" And it just kind of goes from there. And essentially, June says, "I am done," and just leaves. So I'm not sure what that's going to come to, but about 10 minutes later into the episode, something really disturbing happens, I'm gonna say, and basically Fred and Serena are leaving to be escorted to their next day in court, and you hear like muffled noise in the background, and I'm kind of like, is this the show just pumping in different sound? Turns out they go outside and they're supporters waiting for Fred and Serena, like praise Gilead, like blessed be their Waterfords, like they're holding up signs and propaganda, like supporting them, and it's like it's really scary because it's like, holy shit, it's like not only are people supporting what Fred and Serena have done, because June just testified what they've done, but they're also like, they also believe in the ideas of Gilead, and it shows that one, ideas are really powerful and that they spread everywhere because they're in Canada and they're still supporting that ideal. All the supporters or the mob, whoever is cheering on Fred and Serena, and it also shows it's like, man, is Canada in danger too now? Like of being, of succumbing to Gilead's ideals. And I thought that was a really fascinating spin on the show. It's like it really shows how powerful ideas are and how far and wide they can spread. If it whether or not it means anything for Canada, I think is for the series to decide in the future because I really don't know that. I would venture to say probably not by and large because Canada has always been the beacon of hope since day one for this show. So I just thought it was really interesting, and that kind of ends the plot point for this episode. But it makes me really wonder what's next for Canada and the Waterfords and whoever else, because it's going to get really interesting, I think, for the end of the season 4. And then the last big thing that sort of happens this episode is we finally get one of the answers that I've been waiting for the last few episodes, and it proved a lot of my theories wrong. Janine's still alive. Hooray, hooray. Janine is alive, but with the good news comes bad news. Gilead troops actually intercepted her in the wreckage in Chicago and have brought her back to Gilead. And on one hand, I'm super happy Janine's still alive because I thought she was a fascinating character and still is. But my heart breaks because she's back in Gilead now. It's like, damn it, I thought we were done with people getting stuck in Gilead, but apparently not. And Janine, the first thing, Aunt Lydia goes and confronts Janine and sees her for the first time since returning. And it's really strange because when Aunt Lydia's delivered the news that Janine has been found by Gilead troops and is in Gilead now, she receives it from Commander Lawrence, and she's like moved to tears. Like she is so like happy that Janine is back to like be with her again, which it's a very interesting complex in this show is how close Aunt Lydia feels with Janine, and in a way, Janine maybe feels with Aunt Lydia. It's really strange. It's like Aunt Lydia's done some really bad shit to Janine, but it's like made them close in a really sick, twisted way. I don't know how else to describe it, but anyways, like Aunt Lydia's moved to tears and just is so happy to see Janine. And the first thing Janine asks her is, "Where's June?" And then Aunt Lydia tells Janine she made it to Canada, and Janine is just like, yes, like fist pump, like super pumped, which hey, we all are. But and then they start talking even more, and Janina tells Aunt Lydia, I know what happens here. Please just leave me here to die. Don't make me go back to service again. And Aunt Lydia's just not having it. She's gonna try to manipulate Janine into going back and being a handmaid, and Janine is just like, I would rather die. And again, it's showing how strong Janine has gotten over time. It's like from the very start of the series to now, Janine has gone through a lot of different growth, especially in this season. It's been quite a wild ride, but I'm just glad she didn't die because I think that would have been really disappointing if she just died as a result of those bombings from the previous episodes. But it just really sucks that now that she's back in Gilead. That's a huge bummer, and it's also a twist I didn't expect the show to go with either. So surprises all around in this one. So yeah, so basically to sum it all up, a former aunt goes and sees Emily again, bring up a troubled part of her past. Luke is struggling with how to help June cope with being in Canada. June gives her testimony against the Waterfords in court, and the Waterfords actually surprisingly have supporters. And also Janine's alive, and which is great, but she's back in Gilead, which is a really big bummer. So a ton of big stuff happened in this episode. And one thing I want to call out too is this one was also directed by Elizabeth Moss, which I was actually a little surprised because the first episode, which was the first episode that Elizabeth Moss directed in this season was, I believe, episode 3 or 4, which I wasn't a huge fan of. But in this episode, I feel the total opposite. So it's like, wow, it shows that the show is consistently going in one direction, which is up, and it's been really, really exciting. Some things that or some questions I'm going to ask for the next episode is, what's going on with Nick? I knew that we were probably going to get a little bit more of Commander Lawrence and Aunt Lydia in this episode, which we did, but we didn't get anything on Nick. Really curious to see what's kind of going on with him. Also, I'm going to be curious to see what the aftermath of Luke and June's conversation about June's last time she saw Hannah, that being in Gilead not too long ago, just a few episodes ago. I'm wondering how Luke is going to react to that, and also how they're going to adapt and move forward, just with June continuing to adapt to life in Canada as well. So I also want to know what's going to happen with Janine. Is Janine going to find her way out of Gilead ever? Is she going to avoid having to go back into service again? Who knows? And I guess we'll have to wait and see and find out. And also, I wonder how all of the former handmaids, Moira, Emily, June, all the rest of the ladies in that support group, what they're going to do next, because they seem like they want to do something about their past, like I said, and they want to feel that anger was something constructive. I'm just curious to see what that's going to be. So I'm really curious to see what that is going to be more moving forward. And also, I want to see the show kind of teeter on what's the better way to heal. Is it to just heal, or is it to take your anger and do something constructive, or is it something else? So really interesting stuff going on, and I'm looking forward to the next episode too. So this episode was awesome. I thought it was, ladies and gentlemen. What did you think of the episode? Any big things that I didn't talk about that I might have missed? Feel free to jump down in the comments below and let me know your thoughts. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so this has been another episode of The Handmaid's Tale Talk for Season 4, Episode 8. This has been the Bankrupt Hippo YouTube channel. I've been Bryce. Until the next video, have a great day.